We came up with this topic, and I really should say my staff came up with the title for this topic, The Harbinger of a New Transportation Paradigm. So the first thing I needed to do, because it's been quite a while since I've been in college and studied for the SATs, had to look up what harbinger really meant. So I looked it up to the best of my ability, and it means a foreshadowing of a new transportation approach. And I think that's really pertinent because we're at a point in a crossroads in Charlotte where we've been changing things for probably the last 10 years or so, and now we have some results on the ground, and that's what I think our session will focus on today. We're going to talk about how complete streets are transforming our city. I'll present sort of from the transportation perspective. Laura will present from the city planning and placemaking perspective, and finally Pat will talk about from an economic development perspective how complete streets play a role in making your community more economically competitive. So I think we have a really exciting panel, and I'm looking forward to today. So topics to discuss that I'll focus on, I'm gonna talk about how we got to complete streets in Charlotte. I think it's an interesting story, and I'm looking forward to sharing it. And then I'm also going to talk about, and I could almost do an entire session on this, but Charlotte's road diets. That's one of the tools that we're using to get to complete streets, and I'd like to share a couple case studies with you. It's a really interesting time in Charlotte. The city of Charlotte is a fast-growing place, and it has been a fast-growing place. We've often used this story that over the next 20 years or so, we're going to add the current population of Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, or St. Louis to our community, on our city, not the urban area, on top of our city. We're a city of about 750,000 people today. Imagine adding another 300,000 people to your community over the next 20 years or so. And I've often said that that'd be fine and dandy if they each picked up a piece of a sidewalk or a piece of road or a piece of park, a piece of school, and brought it with them, but they're not going to do that. So we have an amazing opportunity to build a lot of infrastructure over the next 20 years to accommodate this growth, and hopefully we're going to do it right and something that'll pass on for generations to come. So what is it that we want to be with our communities? I think the panelists would agree that we want to be a bustling and vibrant city. We want to be a place that's a great place to do business. We want increasing revenues so that we can invest more in our community. We want to be known as a great city, and we often say we want to be a great place to live, work, and play. And I think really what it comes down, we want to be a city that's loved. I think we enjoy living here. We want more people to want to live here. And there's nothing that gives me more pride than when someone comes to visit Charlotte and says, you know, that's a great city. I could see living there one day. And hopefully you do, because we'd like to have you. So we want our city to be loved. And there's lots of components to making your city loved. I really like this cartoon because I think it's about creating a memorable place for your community. This is, in case you can't read it from the back, Linus says, we just got back from a trip. Charlie Brown asked him, did you have a good time? Did you see anything interesting? Linus said, all I saw were shopping centers and motels. Every town looks like every other town. It doesn't matter where you go, you've never left. And I think we can all think about places in our community that are like that. There's nothing very memorable, special about them. We have places like that in Charlotte. We also have other places in Charlotte people say, I love that place. That's a great place. It's the place you bring people to when they come to visit your community, that you show off that portion of your community. And so we've kind of learned that how we design our land uses and how we design our streets really will determine whether our city ends up being loved and a city that's a desirable place to live. So in order for us to get to this point, the department that I work for, the Charlotte Department of Transportation, and Laura probably would agree with this, in order to create better places, our philosophy had to change. We had to move from being the beaker on the left probably 15 years ago and very much focused on moving cars, to a more balanced beaker, a beaker that still is going to move automobiles, but also create streets that balance all the perspectives in a much better way. And I think we have a lot of examples on the ground that have done a much, much better job of that in the last 10, perhaps 15 years. So we want our transportation investments to be places that create value, create streets that are memorable, and make us a more attractive community. We believe quality streets have a long-lasting value, that they pay dividends back to your community over a long period of time. So when we talk about building streets for motorists, bicyclists, pedestrians, and transit users, we're talking about streets that we think we're going to get a return on investment for decades, perhaps even centuries. Because we know that great cities have great streets. If you've been to a great city, you remember the streets, and that's what we want Charlotte to be known for. Now, we have lots and lots of projects that were done many years ago where they're not great streets. They don't work so well for pedestrians. They don't even work that well for motorists. And there were millions and millions and millions of dollars in investments that maybe aren't getting that return on investment. If you look in these areas, you wonder where are the land uses that are giving you that return on investment. But fortunately, we've been trying to change that attitude. And so I asked the question, can we get a do-over? Well, it's really hard to get a do-over on those types of facilities. And we're trying to do that, and I'm going to give you some examples of where we have done that. But the best thing to do is when you're building it, build it right the first time so you don't have to do a do-over. So over the past 10 years or so, when we do intersection improvements or new roads, or we are able to modify streets through road diets, or when we partner with the private sector as development comes up to build streets that we think will stand the test of time, that's sort of that change of philosophy, the change of approach. We're looking for, again, streets that are going to provide transportation benefits, but also give us economic development, economic competitiveness benefits also. Another thing that was pretty shocking to us, we did a little analysis, and we found out that the city of Charlotte is the biggest landowner in our community, and that 13% of all land in our community is made up of our streets. That's pretty amazing. So we control 13% of all land. And so it gave us an opportunity to think about how we're going to make our streets memorable, we're going to make our streets valuable, and that's what people are going to remember about our community, or we're going to hope that they remember about our community. As we began to transform towards a more complete streets approach, I tell you, it's the devil's in the details. It's lots of little things that make for a memorable street and a complete street. Some of the small things, and you may have heard this in previous sessions, you're going to see countdown signals at all of our intersections in Charlotte. That's been a big investment that we've done to try and make our community more pedestrian friendly. We build ped refuge islands wherever it's feasible. We've really accelerated our bicycle parking. And then we've really focused on a place to put trees. One of the things that people love about Charlotte is the tree canopy. And so we changed the way we design streets to make sure that we actually are putting places where trees can go. And you can go down just outside where we are today into any of the neighborhoods immediately around us, and you're going to see a long history of nice planting strips with a treed planting space in them, and that's something that we've worked hard to get back to in our projects. About the time that we were moving to complete streets, we were also experiencing unprecedented growth. And actually, Pat Mumford was a city council member at the time, and the city moved towards some of its biggest transportation investments ever. So since 2006, the city has invested over $400 million in non-transit transportation projects. So that's roads, bikeways, sidewalks, traffic calming, road diets, all the things that come with that. And so that investment has given us an opportunity to show what we mean by complete streets. And so I titled this slide, the best way to get complete streets is to build complete streets. And what I mean by that is as we began to get some complete streets on the ground, people wanted more of them. Residents wanted more of them. Elected officials wanted more of them. The streets looked different. I think there was more value associated with them. And so I think that's been one of our best successes, how much we were able to build in a short time. I'm going to quickly go through, just give you some examples. This is Rossell's Ferry Road, Charlottetown Avenue, Cindy Lane, and these are projects all over the city. We're a very big city, about 275 square miles. East Boulevard, Hickory Grove Road, Old Pineville, Prosperity Church, Stonewall Avenue, Morrisfield Drive, intersection modifications, and this was a big, wide intersection before we got our hands on it, West Trade and Rossell's Ferry, a major state intersection, Woodlawn and South Boulevard, and another state intersection, State Road 49 and John Kirk Road right by our university. And so lots of details, and I don't have time to go through all the details in these slides, but lots of details on how to retrofit or build new better streets than we've done in the past. One of the slides that we've used for a number of years now is we can't keep widening our roads, we have to broaden our thinking. And that's really true. There's a number of corridors that we couldn't even imagine widening because of what it would do to the surrounding land uses and neighborhoods and so on. So one of the ways we are getting a do-over is through road diets. And I'll talk a little bit about road diets. And again, this could be an hour-long presentation, but we can't do that today. We're probably the road diet, since we're the Queen City, road diet queen of the Southeast, I would imagine, and probably could compete with a lot of cities across the country. We've done 24 road diets. Does everyone know what a road diet is? Modifying a road, perhaps taking away travel lanes, spreading those lanes over the different users differently, and hopefully coming up with a better street. We have 7 more that are moving towards implementation, and 20 more are being studied. And you can see sort of these green lines, that's where the majority of our road diets have occurred. I'm going to quickly talk about 2 of them. One was a very complex project, the East Boulevard project, and the other one was a simple project, the Selwyn Avenue conversion. Doesn't mean that the volumes weren't high, but that it was easy to do. This one was just a resurfacing, and this one was a resurfacing with ped refuge islands added and modifications to the street. So I'll start with the complex one, East Boulevard. It's about a 2-mile corridor from end to end. A number of the tours will take you through the East Boulevard corridor during this conference. Phase 1 was implemented in 2006. Phase 2 was implemented in 2010. Both those phases, I would say, have been deemed real successful. Phase 3, we just striped a couple weeks ago. Still working on the signal timing, so we are still tweaking a little bit, but I'm pretty confident that in the end we'll find that that's a success too. So how did we get to the East Boulevard project? It was in a neighborhood plan, actually a plan that was developed by the planning department in 2002. It's sort of that neighborhood. It's a historic neighborhood. That neighborhood's Main Street. It has a regional park, a grocery store, all the things that you need to have a complete neighborhood in it. It was a high volume roadway, or is a high volume roadway. You know, we're right around the 20,000 vehicles per day mark. That's pushing the envelope of a road diet. It had high travel speeds, and it was also a commuter route. So the first phase, phase 1, had existing buildings, you know, in a very narrow right-of-way, about 40 feet wide. You can see the sidewalks pretty close to the back of curb. And phase 2 was much wider, about 70 feet wide, with on-street parking and wider planting strips. So I'll show you some after pictures in a second, but how did it turn out? Again, we would deem phase 1 and phase 2 very successful. We've had really good feedback from the community on it. I think some people, and many people would say it was transformative. It changed the face of the community. And we've also kind of created a monster. More neighborhoods want more road diets, and they point to East Boulevard and some of the other road diets and say, we want one of those for our neighborhood. We can't do them everywhere. They've got to work, but they've been a really successful tool for us. So again, this is what it looked like before, and this is what it looked like after, or what it looks like after. One of the things that is so important about road diets is that circle, that car right there. The most prudent driver in a road diet is going to now dictate the travel speed down that roadway. So if this person's doing the travel speed of 35 miles an hour and that one's doing 55, eventually they're going to catch the most prudent driver, and they're going to be behind the most prudent driver, and they're going to slow down their speed to 35. And that's a pretty key point. In the phase 2, the very wide section, 70 feet across, this is what it looked like before. We used to have unbelievable travel speeds down this roadway. It wasn't uncommon to see someone doing 60 or 70 miles an hour down this roadway. And this is what it looks like after. And again, the most prudent driver is now going to dictate that travel speed down the roadway. Again, with the wide ped refuge islands, much easier to cross that street than it was to cross that street. As part of this complex project, we built a lot of ped refuge islands. I think there's something like 17 ped refuge islands along that 2-mile segment. It's not easy to build ped refuge islands in the middle. You've got to cut out a big old hole in your roadway, and it's challenging. But the benefits are that people then use them, especially if you've consistently put in those ped refuge islands down the roadway. on the East Boulevard project. Now we certainly have a lot of cyclists that have returned to the corridor. We have lots of employment along the corridor, so people walking up to restaurants at lunchtime, crossing over to the restaurants. A lot more outdoor eating. One of the things that we've heard and the feedback we've received is when you road dieted the roadway, the travel noise, the noise from the passing cars came down as you got all the speeds around 35 miles an hour, so you can actually hold a conversation at the outdoor cafes, which you would have found difficult before. More cafes being highly used, and lots of different users of the corridor, scooters and everything else. I'm going to talk a little bit now just about a very simple road diet, which we had an opportunity. We were getting ready to resurface this road, 4-lane undivided, about 20,000 cars per day. It was getting ready to be resurfaced. We put a hold on it for 1 year, said, and this was after East Boulevard had been done. We worked with the community and said, you know, if you want, we could road diet this roadway and go from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, 2-way left turn lane, lane in each direction, and bike lanes. And so we showed them the traffic analysis. We said this is feasible to do. This is a Photoshop image right here. The community got on board with the project, and so that's what we implemented. We ended up implementing it. We're actually moving on the East Boulevard, one segment of the East Boulevard project, and on this project, we're actually moving more cars per day now than we were before, but just at more moderated travel speeds. Again, the most prudent driver will dictate the travel speeds down it. In the portion of Selwyn that we weren't able to road diet because we had heavy on-street parking usage, we implemented our first sharrows as part of this project, and so far we've had nothing but a good experience with them, and it seems like we've done our job in that the motorists and the bicyclists are now coexisting much better than they were before. I won't kid you. Moving towards complete streets is challenging. You're going to have folks that are concerned about it. Doing road diets is extremely challenging, especially if it's your first road diet in your community. When we were getting ready to embark on the East Boulevard project, we had our current mayor then lived just off of East Boulevard, and so you can see the hello mayor, good news, I have found a new way to reduce the traffic on our streets. I have made some of our 4-lane roads into 2 lanes with a lane for bikes on each side, and hello. When we were building East Boulevard, it was difficult. It's a difficult construction period, putting in those ped refuge islands and maintaining traffic, and the mayor was concerned about the project. But after it was done and everything settled down and the project was deemed a success, I remember when he was leaving office, he said, there were only 2 projects that I was wrong about in my entire career, and East Boulevard was one of them. And he said, if East Boulevard is what complete streets are about, then I'm for complete streets. And so that was a real kudos to us. And he was a really progressive mayor, but you know, even road diets take a little bit of understanding to make them happen. During construction, we had a lot of people upset with us. I know this is hard to read, but in a town known for its crowded roads, terrible crosstown streets, and supposed lack of money for improvements, we continue to spend freely to make our roads even more inaccessible and hostile for motor vehicles. Where did traffic engineers in Charlotte get their training? And then if the goal is to bring pedestrians to the streets, that may actually work since they can no longer drive down East Boulevard. So you have to have a thick skin to be in this business, and you have to be able to get people through the construction period to the end. And in the end, good things happen, and we had lots of comments like this. If the goal was to slow down traffic, improve pedestrian safety, and quality of life, while allowing traffic to flow smoothly, you've succeeded. And so that's what I would say is the takeaway, especially when you're first moving your projects out and moving in a different direction. It takes a little bit of patience. It takes a little bit of thick skin. It really helps to build advocacy from the neighborhoods to support the projects, and then buy yourself some time so you can get the projects on the ground, and then people see that actually what you've done is something that's really beneficial and powerful.